Welcome to the group visit, GI Foundations, Heal Your Gut, Heal Your Body. This is one of my favorite topics because if you start to learn how to heal your gastrointestinal system, you have the ability to treat, manage, and even reverse so many common conditions that patients see the doctor for. And so when I see patients in the office, the common reasons are things like this: fatigue, stomach problems, high blood pressure, pain, and all these might seem disconnected. But we all know when we see the doctor, we want to figure out what the cause of our symptoms are or our disease because we want to feel better. And so let's go back a little bit to biology. When we were learning about all the different systems in our body, we learned about the circulatory system, the digestive system, nervous system, and so on and so forth. We learned about them as though they were separate systems, as though they had their own life in and of themselves. Now this parallels how things operate in medicine sometimes. We have the doctor for our neurological system, we have the orthopedist for our skeletal system, and the cardiologist for our circulatory system. But we all know that intuitively they're all connected. And in functional medicine, we know that there are systems that connect these other bigger systems that I've just talked about. And by understanding that the gastrointestinal system is very important and it connects all these other systems together, we have the ability to fix the entire body by addressing that very important GI system. So when we look at our diseases, we recognize we want to flip that arrow. We want to be less disease-focused and more focused on the root causes. And the GI system, we will find, is at the root cause of so many of the conditions you might be seeking treatment of. So let's explore this even further. How can we help our bodies? Well, first we have to understand how we fail our bodies, how we fail specifically the GI system. And so we recognize we eat the wrong foods many times. Our popular culture is full of food ingredients that may not be good to our GI system. Hydrogenated oils, foods that have been manipulated by man and not looking like the way they came out of the earth. Looking at things like sugar, fat, and salt when they're put in unnecessary amounts in our food. And then, of course, taking nature's formula for food and genetically modifying it and making that food now somewhat of a perceived enemy by our immune system. So it tends to turn on inflammation. We might become allergic to that food or become intolerant. We also recognize that we sometimes eat too much, and that puts a burden on our GI system. Any system has limits, and we have to recognize how to treat it wonderfully in order for it to treat us wonderfully and help our bodies heal and optimally work. The other thing we might do is eat too fast. Again, it's a matter of looking at our machinery, our systems, and understanding what is the best way to get the lifelong health out of that system. And in order to get that optimal health out of the entire body, we recognize that the GI health system and the function of that gastrointestinal system is pivotal. And there are 4 pillars that I want you to think about. 4 pillars that define the GI system: digestion, elimination, microflora, and gut integrity. Now these are something that we want to focus on today. We all think about digestion and elimination. We'll talk about that a little further. But you might not remember that in the gut, there are many places where good bacteria and good germs live, things that help us function. We want to make sure that we help those good guys and keep them there in the right amount. We also understand that the lining of our whole digestive GI system is very important to the entire function of the body. Just as the skin on the outside of our body protects us, the skin that lines everything from our mouth to our rectum is also very important in terms of defending us. Actually, there's a statistic that says that in one day, your GI lining defends itself as much as your skin on the outside does for an entire lifetime. Now, how do you do this? Well, you have to look at your genetics, but you have the power to modify your diet and your lifestyle so that you can maintain those 4 pillars of GI health to be able to get you the optimal health that you desire. So how do you achieve this? Let's start looking at it a little bit more in detail. There's a system that we use in functional and integrative medicine called the 4 R's. Now we've actually expanded that to a 5th R, but for the sake of this group visit, we understand that we need to remove our first R, remove those things that can be harmful to our system. Allergens, toxins, other germs that we don't want in our digestive system. We also recognize we have to replace things that we might have lost, things like acid, digestive enzymes. We recognize that we must also re-inoculate, which is a fancy word for replacing those good bacteria. You might know them as probiotics. You might hear about them in terms of certain foods having higher amounts of probiotics to put back what that GI system needs to function properly. Last but not least, we have repair. Many times when we eat the wrong foods or have issues that affect that lining we spoke about, we need to repair it so it's nice and strong to defend us against the environment outside. So let's look a little bit more at how we must process food, because it's not just there in a simple format just to be able to get food into your system and then get it out. It goes through a specific process. Let's take the example of a carrot. You start by chewing the carrot, and now the carrot starts changing shape. In the stomach, there's acid that is added, and now just for the sake of illustration, let's say the shape changes to this cloud-like puff. Then the food or the puff travels its way to the small intestine. There you have the addition of digestive enzymes, the right ones to be able to process that carrot even further down to this shape here. And last, you go and you have it ready for inspection because it's gone through these multi-step processes in order to make it the right appearance. It's ready for inspection by the small intestine lining. Now these pink cells you see here with the little villi or little hairs, these are the enterocytes. They are critical for your health because they are the basis of your GI health. So let's look at that a little bit further. There's a perfect pathway. We talked about how the food has to change shape so it's ready for inspection. When it is ready, it gets a VIP pass, travels through the enterocyte and turns into a different shape. Let's just say it's a heart. Now that heart is now in the bloodstream, and you see all those green circles with the plus signs. That's our symbol for the immune system. 70% of your immune system lies right there in your gut lining. It's there to be able to detect any intruders that might make it there through that small intestine lining. And if only hearts are coming through, that immune system is very happy. It says, hearts are good for us. We know you went through the right security system. You are okay to travel through to the rest of the body. Now, we know that all systems are there to help us for protection, but not all systems are foolproof. Let's look at what can happen. When we take things like antibiotics, bad foods, things that have germs on them, or stress, we can damage the lining. So in this example, notice how the probiotic layer up at the top of those enterocytes is a little bit patchy. And now we also have areas where we don't have those pink enterocytes standing shoulder to shoulder. So our gut integrity has now been compromised. And we now, instead of having a tight brick and mortar system, we have some gaps. So we call those tight junctions in medicine. And when you lose those tight junctions, you are losing the integrity of that barrier. Now what happens? Remember that star? Assuming that your food got digested appropriately and is ready for inspection, it can accidentally pass through one of these gaps. And when it does, it didn't turn into a heart in the previous example. So the immune system says, uh-oh, these are not the hearts that we consider safe. And so the immune system becomes activated and becomes inflamed. And now the system is in a mode of defense and it's not in the mode of healing anymore. So this, when we look at it in a more complex diagram, where physicians, we look at all the different things that can actually fall through those gaps. And when we have those gaps, we call that increased intestinal permeability. Again, just fancy words that say that our barrier is no longer intact and things are leaking through. Now, when they leak through, you can tell how that immune system has the potential to be very overwhelmed. So it can become weak. It can become distracted because it has so many things that are falling through those cracks per se. And so that can lead to the immune system tagging certain foods as intruders, even though they aren't really harmful at the beginning of the process, but now the immune system again has been distracted and has tagged it as a food allergy or sensitivity or an intolerance. And this can proceed on and on to cause more and more inflammation that we know about and lead to autoimmune conditions, again, because that immune system is overwhelmed. Now, what else happens? Well, we know that when there is all this commotion happening at the level of the GI lining, it affects all the other functions of the GI system. And so remember that bloodstream that is completely in alarm state with the immune system, that is traveling throughout your whole body and creating alarm signals everywhere. And this is where we get the whole title, Heal Your Gut, Heal Your Body. Because if you can stop inflammation down at the core of your GI system, you have the ability to fix all inflammation-related diseases in some way. And we know that these are all connected to that core concept. So look, cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, autoimmune diseases, pulmonary diseases, all these could have a root in inflammation and therefore a root in your gut or in your GI system. Now, let's look at a popular concept that makes a lot of sense to some of my patients, and hopefully it'll make sense for you as well too. Let's suppose you were given this beautiful Lamborghini and you thought, oh goodness, this is a wonderful piece of machinery. I need to take care of it very well. Think of this as your body. Now, if you had this expensive, wonderful, state-of-the-art machinery, I bet you that you would take very good care of it and make sure it got the exact fuel it needed to perform at its best. You likely wouldn't go to the gas station and just fill it with any old cheap gas. You probably also would not fill it with the wrong fuel, something like water. Even though water is good for many things, you'd probably recognize that putting water down the gas tank of your Lamborghini would not be a wise idea for the performance of that Lamborghini. If anything, it could be very harmful. Well, foods are no different. There are many healthy foods, common foods like wheat and dairy, that could be the wrong fuel for you. So just because they're healthy in general for the public doesn't mean that it could not be the wrong fuel for your Lamborghini, your body. Let's look at that a little further. We probably already know a friend or even ourselves who has felt better when we take a certain food out of our diet. Again, wheat and dairy are common ones. And when we remove that allergenic food, we might notice a huge improvement, not just in our digestive systems, but maybe in terms of brain fog or headaches, or maybe your skin looks a lot better. Maybe you're breathing differently. So we recognize that food and taking those foods that could be triggers for your disease or symptoms, taking them out of your diet can make a big difference. So remember, not all food is enemy, but there can be a food that gets tagged by that immune system as an enemy. And when it does, in medicine, we call that an adverse reaction to the food. Just a fancy way of saying that you're having a negative or a reaction that you really don't want, a reaction to the food. Even though you like the food, your body is giving a negative reaction. Now, it can be many different names. You can have an adverse reaction called an allergy or a sensitivity or an intolerance. And these are all just like the military, if you think about it. They're there to fight the enemy, but they're different kinds of military teams that we have to handle different kinds of enemies. So this is kind of our way of understanding the different types of adverse reactions to food. Now, one of the most common ones you might know about, one of the most severe, is that related to peanuts. You might have a child or know a child who has such a significant issue, and it's an extreme adverse reaction where they have anaphylaxis. But most of us do not have these extreme reactions. What we have is something much more common, non-anaphylactic food reactions. So whether they're an allergy, sensitivity, or an intolerance, they make up 95% of the food reactions. And these symptoms are a little trickier because they can be delayed hours to days. And so you don't see the connection as you would as if you swallowed a peanut and your lips swelled up immediately. But these symptoms can be very vague as well, vague to you until you identify the connection. They can be as obvious as hives or eczema or difficulty breathing, but they can be as vague as headaches, or maybe you just feel more tired. Again, that brain fog. And the list of these symptoms is too much to fit on this one page, but you can see things like depression, anxiety, psoriasis, migraines, all can be linked back to an adverse reaction to food. and being linked back to the health of your GI system. So in order to figure out if you have one of these food triggers, it takes a little time because again, your goal is you want to reduce those triggers in your system to reduce that incoming garbage, that incoming inflammation. Your physician might decide to do some testing and give you some extra support in the process. They might decide to do skin prick testing, intradermal testing, maybe order some blood labs. The other thing they might request of you is to do stool testing. But one of the most common things that your physician may find necessary to recommend is an elimination diet. And we love elimination diets because they're simple and very effective. It means identifying certain foods that could be triggers and eliminating them from your diet 100%, but just for 2 to 4 weeks. This can be extended longer in some particular cases. But when you eliminate those potential triggers, your body might feel so much better. Your symptoms, your diseases might start to reverse, might start to be lessened. Your medications might not be as necessary anymore. And then after that elimination trial, your doctor will show you how to provoke a reaction by introducing that food back. And if that symptom, let's say it's a headache, comes back with a vengeance when you reintroduce, let's say for example, dairy, then you know that's a food trigger. And so this is a wonderful way to start cleaning up that system. These are the 6 most common foods that can cause symptoms in the whole body by affecting that GI system. Things like eggs, dairy, nuts, shellfish, soy, and wheat and gluten. But the list can be expanded. So whatever you eat more of has the potential to leak into your system and then trigger that immune system. So the list can go on based on what you eat most. One of the little pearls I have is that if you crave a certain food, it might be a food that your body is reacting to. So we will understand that we want to eliminate those bad foods, reducing our inflammation, and that we use testing and support in order to do that. But there's another thing I bet you're thinking about. Well, what happens when I identify that? What about all the garbage that I've created, through this lifetime where I've been taking wheat or dairy or soy and not realizing it was causing my issues? How can I get that out? Well, that's the other goal of the GI system, elimination. Now, elimination, many times we think of by thinking of our colon and thinking it has the job of elimination, but it's much broader than that. Remember, elimination as a big umbrella means taking out all those bad things, allergens, toxins, harmful organisms, but also, of course, having regular bowel movements, having a wonderful system that helps you urinate appropriately with good hydration, with good water. So we recognize there's 4 main ways that our body takes out the trash. It uses the colon, the kidney, the skin, and the liver. It does this because it recognizes that making garbage is inevitable, just like in your house, but the goal is not to make so much and to have good systems to take that garbage out. Your liver is also very important as a blood filter and a garbage removal system. It actually acts as a security guard. When your food goes through those enterocytes into the bloodstream, the next destination is to the liver. And that's because the liver is a security guard and there and then can decide, you know what, I don't want you to go any further into our system. And so it can stop harmful toxins from making it even further. It is the home of phase 1 and phase 2 conjugation. These are fancy medical words that basically say this is the home where we eliminate toxins from our system. So remember, be good to your liver and be good to your colon and your kidney and skin, because these are part of your entire waste disposal system. You want to take care of them so they can continue to take care of you. So what can you do to help? Well, consider eating like a bird. Many times we can overburden our GI system by just eating too much. So eat small, eat often, maybe make a general rule of thumb to maybe decrease your calories by around 20%. Eat with mindfulness, slow down, enjoy the food, put the fork down between bites, savor flavor. Try not to be distracted by TV or reading or the computer when you're eating, because then you're less likely to overeat. We recognize it's important to eat when you're hungry, not just when you're bored, tired, frustrated, sad, mad, or if you see a billboard with a delicious burger appeal. You want to eat when your body says it's hungry because it will regulate how many calories to eat that way. You want to make sure you eat clean foods. We talked about eating foods that came from the earth and less often manipulated by man. So plant foods are wonderful. We want them to be minimally processed whenever possible so that it has that true natural benefit intended for your body. So think about using veggies, beans, fruit, oats, grains that are healthy. You also want to avoid those foods that might have been found to be triggers for you. Might be wheat, might be dairy, or it could be any known trigger, but you want to avoid it in order to preserve that gut lining so it can help you. How about eating anti-inflammatory? You might have heard about this. One of the ways you can help yourself is to eat good fats. Fats are not all bad. You want to prioritize those good fats from good healthy fish like salmon, flax seeds, chia seeds, olive oil, good olive oil. You want to avoid those bad fats that you find in some vegetable oils. Avoid trans fats completely. Those are those hydrogenated oils we talked about earlier. Avoid margarine. Avoid fried foods because those are oxidized, highly heated fats. And avoid those baked goods that you know have those unnecessary bad fats. Remember, the Mediterranean diet has been proven to have those wonderful fats in it, has many plant foods, again, to help your whole body reduce inflammation. So, one last little bit of advice. Consider what your grandmother might have told you. To eat a big breakfast, eat breakfast like a king, and then eat lunch like the queen and dinner like a pauper. Because if you do, you'll notice that you'll be leaner in your midsection. You'll be trimmer, you'll have more muscle, less fat, and more energy. And if you flip it around, like many of us might do, where we eat a small or no breakfast, eat lunch even bigger, and then have a big dinner, and then kind of relax by the TV and go to bed, we recognize that our weight tends to travel to that middle zone. So just think of this picture, and we recognize that when you eat the right quantity, quality of food, and time it appropriately, you can really find better health. One of the things that many of my patients talk about is they find it very inconvenient to eat breakfast, or it's difficult if I tell them that they're allergic to dairy or wheat. How can they day to day find some good foods? Consider using a health shake that's picked personally for you so that you can have that one meal taken care of, as it is so important in maintaining that body composition that helps you stay healthy. So we've seen how Western and Eastern medicine come together beautifully with functional and integrative medicine. You understand a lot better when we say no guts, no glory. You see that connection. And you recognize that the world is round, and the place which may seem like the end may also be only the beginning.